When I moved into my new building, I thought I'd hit the jackpot. Rent was cheap, the location was perfect, and the place even had laundry in the basement. The landlord seemed decent enough, and the tenants kept mostly to themselves. There was just one thing people warned me about. Don't talk to the guy in 3B. They said it in that offhand way you talk about someone's quirks. Like, don't park too close to Mrs. Caldwell's garden or don't feed the stray cats. But the tone was a little heavier, less casual. Naturally, I ignored it. The man in 3B was always in the hallway. No matter what time I left for work, or came home, or even ran down at 3 a.m. to grab a package, he was there, standing in the same spot by his door. At first I thought he was just an insomniac. Lots of people are. But I started to notice something strange. He never shifted, never sat down, never scrolled through his phone. Just stood there, hands clasped in front of him, staring at the opposite wall. One night, I smiled at him and said, "Rough night?" He didn't blink. He didn't move. He just said, "I don't sleep." And then he smiled, too wide, like he was showing off the effort of smiling more than the feeling behind it. Over time, I learned more from whispers in the building. Mrs. Alvarez in 2A said he'd been there longer than anyone. He never moved in, she said. He was just always here. The super said he never got rent checks from 3B, but the landlord swore it was handled. One guy swore he saw him outside at 4 a.m., standing perfectly still on the sidewalk, staring up at the moon. I tried not to get sucked in. People gossip. They exaggerate. But curiosity is a stubborn thing. One evening, I came home late and heard something from behind his door. A sound like whispering. Not a voice exactly. More like 100 voices layered together, murmuring all at once. I froze in the hallway. The whispering stopped, and then his door creaked open, just an inch. Through the gap, I saw his eye, wide, unblinking, fixed on me. "You should get some sleep," he said, and then the door shut. After that, I couldn't stop thinking about him. I started losing sleep myself, not because of noise, just because I felt like he was always awake, always watching. I'd wake up at 2 a.m. and swear I heard footsteps in the hall. I'd look through the peephole and see him standing there, facing my door instead of his. I stopped inviting friends over. I stopped answering calls from my family. My world shrank to the length of that hallway, and the figure always waiting there. And then one night, I made the mistake of asking him why. I came home, found him in his usual spot, and blurted out, "Why don't you sleep?" He turned his head toward me slowly like an owl. "Because if I sleep," he said, "they'll move." I swallowed hard. "Who?" He smiled again, that awful, too wide smile. "The ones in the walls." I laughed nervously. "Funny." His face didn't change. "Not funny. They shift when you dream. They crawl. If you don't watch, they'll be inside you by morning." I brushed past him, heart pounding, telling myself he was crazy. Just some lonely guy with too much imagination. But when I locked my door that night, I pressed my ear against the wall. "And I swear," I heard scratching. "The man in 3B is gone now." One morning, his door was wide open. The room inside was empty. No furniture, no clothes, no bed, just a bare mattress on the floor with deep grooves carved into the wood around it, like someone had clawed at the ground night after night. The landlord told us he moved out, but nobody saw him leave. And sometimes, when I lie awake in bed, I think about what he said, about the ones in the walls, about how they move when you dream, and I wonder if maybe he didn't move out. Maybe he just finally blinked. That was our first story of the night. Hey friends, welcome back. I'm SpiderFish. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps me out. Let's move on to the next one. Another unsettling little tale from the edges of the ordinary. Story 2. The library that doesn't exist on any map. When I was a kid, I used to ride my bike around the neighborhood for hours. We didn't have phones yet, and our parents were okay with us disappearing as long as we came home before dark. One summer afternoon, I pedaled farther than usual. Past the park, past the gas station, past the row of old houses that smelled like mildew and rain. That's when I found it. A building I'd never seen before. It looked like a library. Tall brick walls, arched windows, ivy creeping up the sides, a carved stone sign over the door that just said, Public Library. The weird part? I knew this neighborhood. I'd ridden these streets 100 times, and I'd never seen a library here. Inside, it was quiet. Not library quiet. Thick quiet. Like the air itself was heavy. The place was dimly lit, the lamps casting soft yellow circles on wooden tables. The shelves were enormous, stretching so high I couldn't see the tops. And the books. They weren't like any I'd seen before. No glossy covers, no titles in bold letters. Just old, cracked leather bindings with faded gold lettering. A woman sat at the front desk, pale, thin, with hair the color of dust. She didn't look up when I walked in. Just said, in a voice that seemed to echo too much, "You're late," I stammered. "For what?" "For your reading," she said. I backed away, muttered something about having to leave, and bolted out the door. When I told my friends, they laughed. "There's no library over there," they said. "Closest one is 10 minutes in the other direction." I dragged them back to the same street the next day. We found the row of houses, the gas station, the cracked sidewalk I remembered. But the library was gone. Just an empty lot, overgrown with weeds. I tried to forget about it, but the memory stuck in my brain like a splinter. Fast forward 15 years. I was back in my hometown for a funeral. One night, restless, I decided to go for a walk. I wandered the old streets, half nostalgic, half numb. And there it was, the library. Same ivy on the bricks, same arched windows, same stone sign, Public Library. This time, I went inside. The woman at the desk looked exactly the same. Not older, not younger, exactly the same. She looked up this time, her eyes cloudy grey, and said, "You kept us waiting." I swallowed hard. I was a kid last time. She smiled faintly. "Time passes differently here." I should have left. Every instinct screamed at me to leave. But curiosity pulled me deeper. The shelves stretched on endlessly. I wandered aisle after aisle. And the books, they weren't alphabetized. They weren't organized at all. Some were stacked sideways, some crammed upside down, some with no titles at all. I pulled one at random. The leather was cold, damp. On the spine, J. Ramirez. I opened it. It wasn't a story. It wasn't fiction. It was a life. Pages and pages detailing someone's childhood, their first kiss, their college years. Every memory, every thought. And the last page ended with a date. The date of their death. I dropped the book, my heart hammering. Picked up another. M. Thomas. Same thing. A life. Catalogued start to finish. The last page. The death date. I realized what this library was. It wasn't books. It was people. Every life, written out, stored here. I stumbled backward, and the woman's voice echoed through the stacks. "Don't lose your page." I ran for the exit, but the aisles stretched longer than before. My footsteps echoed too loud, like the shelves were mocking me. I finally burst through the door, gasping, and found myself back on the sidewalk. The building was gone again. Just another empty lot. When I got home, I couldn't shake the feeling something was wrong. I washed my hands, splashed water on my face, tried to steady myself. Then I saw it. On my palm. Ink. Smudged, but clear enough to read. A name, my name, and a page number. That was 3 years ago. I've tried to move on, tried to convince myself it was stress, exhaustion, maybe even a hallucination. But sometimes, when I can't sleep, I swear I hear pages turning in the dark. And last week, a package arrived at my door. No return address. Inside was a single book. Old leather cover. My name embossed on the spine. I haven't opened it yet, because I know what the last page will say. That was our second story of the night. A little longer, a little heavier, but still told in that calm voice that lets the dread slip in slowly. Let's move to our third tale, something different, but just as eerie. Story 3. The night bus only runs at 3:33. I don't usually take the bus. I've got an old car, barely running, but it gets me where I need to go. Still, there was one night last winter when the car wouldn't start. The snow was piling up, and I had to get across town. Uber was surge pricing like crazy, so I trudged over to the bus stop instead. The schedule said the last bus was at midnight. But when I got there, cold, teeth chattering, street empty, I saw the digital sign light up. Next arrival, Route 13, 3:33 a.m. That made no sense. It was already 3:20. Sure enough, at exactly 3:33, headlights appeared down the street. An old bus rattled up, paint peeling, the number 13 flickering above the windshield. The doors wheezed open. Inside, the lights were dim, and the driver didn't look at me. He just stared straight ahead, face hidden by the shadow of his cap. I climbed on, swiped my card. The machine beeped, but the driver didn't acknowledge me. There were only a few passengers, all sitting perfectly still. At first, I thought they were asleep, but as the bus rumbled forward, I realized none of them were moving. A woman in a fur coat stared out the window, her breath fogging the glass even though the bus was warm. A man in a business suit clutched a briefcase to his chest, knuckles bone white. A teenager with headphones sat rigid, no music playing, and every time I blinked, they seemed to shift slightly, like they were turning, millimeter by millimeter, to face me. The bus didn't follow any route I recognized. It didn't stop at any stations. We drove past buildings I'd never seen, streets that weren't on any map. The windows showed neighborhoods that looked abandoned, houses with boarded windows, streetlights flickering weakly, snow piled on cars that hadn't moved in years. At one point, we passed a row of storefronts. All the signs said the same thing: "Rest here." I turned to look at the driver. He hadn't moved, hands fixed on the wheel, cap hiding his face. That's when I heard it. A whisper, faint but everywhere. I thought it was coming from the passengers. I leaned closer to the woman in the fur coat, and yes, her lips were moving. Barely. She was whispering my name. I jerked back, looked at the businessman, his lips too, the teenager, all of them whispering in unison, my name, over and over. Panicking, I stood and said, "Driver, stop the bus." For the first time, he moved. Slowly, he turned his head toward me, and where his face should have been, there was nothing, just darkness, like someone had cut a hole in the world where his features should be. He spoke, but the voice didn't come from him. It came from everywhere. "You're late." I bolted for the doors, slamming the stop button. The lights flickered. The bus screeched to a halt in the middle of nowhere. I shoved the doors open and stumbled out into the snow. The bus sat there, engine idling, doors still open. The passengers slowly turned their heads to watch me. Then, with a hiss of brakes, the doors shut. The bus pulled away, disappearing into the night. I was left standing in an empty street. No houses, no signs, just blank white snow stretching out in every direction. And then, suddenly, I was back at my bus stop, my phone buzzing in my pocket, 3:34 a.m. I told myself it was exhaustion, hallucination, a dream. But when I checked my transit app the next day, I saw something new. A route I'd never seen before. Route 13. Next arrival, 3:33 a.m. And the stop? It was marked right in front of my apartment. That was our third story. Short, strange, and the kind of thing that makes you glance twice at the late-night bus schedule. Next up, we'll dive into another tale, one with a slower build, more detail, and maybe a little more bite. Story 4. The house that waits until you're alone. When I was a kid, there was a house on the edge of town that everyone avoided. Not because it was falling apart. In fact, it looked perfect. Too perfect. White siding that never seemed to fade, windows that gleamed even in the dead of winter, a lawn trimmed like a chessboard. But no one ever saw anyone go in or come out. We called it the waiting house. One summer, when I was 13, a group of us dared each other to get closer. Kids do dumb things. We swore we'd only peek in the windows, maybe knock on the door, then run. We rode our bikes down the cracked road, hearts hammering. When the house came into view, all of us got quiet. Because it looked even stranger up close. The paint wasn't just white. It was too white, like fresh paper. The curtains inside hung perfectly still, even though a breeze tugged at the trees around it. And the air was thicker, like humidity, but cold. Nobody wanted to be the first. Finally, I said I'd do it. I walked up the porch, boards creaking under my sneakers, and pressed my face to the window. The inside was spotless, furniture arranged neatly, not a speck of dust. But it wasn't right, because the furniture wasn't new. It was old, too old. A floral couch from the 70s, a wooden TV set with dials, lamps that belonged in a museum. And sitting in the armchair was a man. He wasn't moving, just sitting there, facing the window, hands folded in his lap. At first I thought he was a mannequin. His skin was pale, waxy, and he didn't blink. But then his lips twitched, just barely. I stumbled back, tripped on the porch step, and the others bolted. We didn't stop pedaling until we were back in town. When we told people, they laughed, said it was just our imaginations, said the house was empty. But I know what I saw. Fast forward 20 years. I'd long since moved away, started a job, a family. The waiting house was just a half-remembered nightmare from childhood. Until last year, when I had to go back for my mother's funeral. Driving through my hometown, I decided to check. Curiosity, or maybe stubbornness. The house was still there, and it looked exactly the same. Not one shingle out of place, not one blade of grass too long. I parked, heart pounding, and walked up the porch again. And through the window, the man in the chair. Same spot, same clothes, same folded hands, but older. His skin sagged, his hair thinner, his suit faded. Still staring, still waiting. This time, I went in. The door wasn't locked. It opened smoothly, no creak, no dust. The air inside smelled faintly of mothballs and something sweeter, like flowers long since dead. The man didn't move, didn't acknowledge me, just stared ahead. "Hello?" I whispered. His head twitched, just a fraction, and then his lips moved. "You're late." My blood turned to ice. I backed away, but something pulled me deeper into the house. My footsteps echoed, too loud, on the wooden stairs. Upstairs, the bedrooms looked untouched. Beds made neatly, toys lined up on a shelf. Except the toys weren't new. They were from decades ago. Dolls with cracked faces, tin cars with flaking paint. And on each bed was a figure, lying perfectly still, covered to the chin with quilts. I thought they were dolls at first, but the longer I looked, the more I realized they weren't. They were people, perfectly preserved, eyes closed, hands folded, like they were only sleeping. And every single one of them had lips that twitched. As I backed toward the stairs, I heard it, a whisper, low and steady, rising from every room. Not words exactly, just the sound of lips moving. I covered my ears, but it didn't stop. It was in my bones. When I turned, the man from the chair was at the top of the stairs. He hadn't walked, he hadn't climbed. He was just there. "You shouldn't have come alone," he said. I ran. Down the stairs, through the front door, across the lawn. When I reached my car, I dared one last glance back. The windows were filled with faces, dozens of them, pale, still, watching me. And in the center, in the armchair, the man smiled. For the first time. I told myself I'd never go back. but the house has a way of pulling at you. Last week, I saw a post online. Someone had uploaded a picture of an abandoned house in my hometown. It was the waiting house. Same perfect paint. Same 2 bright windows. And in the comments, someone wrote, "I went inside once. There was a man in the chair. He told me I was late." That was our 4th story. Long, layered, the kind of tale that lingers in the back of your head when you pass an empty house at night. We've still got more to come. Each story different, but carrying that same quiet unease. Story 5. The hotel room that wasn't on any floor. Traveling for work isn't glamorous. It's airports, stale coffee, and cheap hotels with scratchy sheets. But sometimes, it's worse. Much worse. 2 years ago, I had a conference in a mid-sized city. My company booked me into a hotel downtown. Nice enough place, tall, modern, glass front, the kind of lobby that smells like lemon polish. I checked in late, half asleep, and the receptionist smiled too brightly. "Room 721, she said, sliding over the key card. I took the elevator up. Simple enough. Except when the doors opened, I knew something was wrong. The hallway was dim, not dark exactly, just dim. Like the light bulbs were on their last breath. The carpet was a faded red, worn thin, with patterns I couldn't quite make out. And it was silent. No TVs, no voices, no hum of air conditioning. My room was at the end of the hall, 721. The door looked older than the others, wood instead of the usual bland beige. The numbers were brass, tarnished. I swiped my keycard. The light flashed green. Inside, the air smelled stale. It wasn't like any hotel room I'd ever stayed in. The furniture was old-fashioned. Heavy wooden dresser, velvet drapes, a bed with carved posts. A rotary phone sat on the nightstand, and the wallpaper was peeling, but underneath wasn't drywall. It was more wallpaper, layer after layer. I dropped my bag, too tired to care, and collapsed on the bed. That's when the phone rang. I jumped. Who even uses landlines anymore? I picked up. "Hello?" Static. Then a voice, low, rough. "You shouldn't be here." Click. I froze, staring at the phone. Tried to laugh it off. Probably some wrong number, or a prank. But unease settled in my chest. I decided to shower, wash off the travel grime. The bathroom was small with cracked tiles and a buzzing fluorescent light. I wiped steam from the mirror and froze. Because my reflection wasn't moving the same way I was. When I lifted my hand, it lifted slower. When I leaned closer, it leaned too close, nose almost pressing the glass. And its mouth opened, even though mine stayed shut. The mirror me whispered, "You're late." I stumbled back, heart hammering, and the reflection snapped back to normal. I didn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening. Around 2 a.m., I heard footsteps in the hallway. Slow, dragging. I peered through the peephole. The hallway was empty, but the footsteps kept circling. Back and forth, back and forth. At one point, they stopped right outside my door, and whoever it was whispered, "Room 721. Morning couldn't come fast enough. When the sun rose, I grabbed my bag and bolted. But when I stepped into the hallway, it looked different, brighter, normal. The carpet clean, the light strong. Other guests bustled around. A maid pushed a cart. I took the elevator down and went to check out. "Room 721, I told the receptionist, sliding over the key card. She frowned. "We don't have a room 721. I blinked. "What? I stayed there last night." She shook her head. "Our top floor only goes up to 6. Maybe you mean 621? "No," I insisted. "I was on the 7th floor." She smiled nervously. "So we don't have a 7th floor." I left in a daze, checked the elevators again. They only went up to 6. Later, when I told a co-worker, he paled. "You too?" Turns out, I wasn't the first. Others had stories. Guests nights waking up in rooms that weren't on the registry. Rooms with old furniture, rotary phones, peeling wallpaper. Rooms that didn't exist in the morning. Nobody knows why. Some say the hotel was built on top of an older one, swallowed whole, and sometimes the old floors bleed through. Others say it's the guests themselves, the ones who never checked out. Last week, my phone rang, my cell phone. I answered, and through the static, I heard the same low voice. You shouldn't have left. And now, every time I book a hotel, no matter where, I check the numbers. And I pray I never see 721 again. That was our fifth story. One of those quiet urban legends that makes you glance twice at hotel hallways and mirrors. We'll keep going with more long, strange tales that feel like they could happen to anyone. Story 6. The town that isn't on any GPS. I drive a lot for work. Highways, back roads, endless stretches of the same gas stations and fast food signs. Usually, it all blurs together into one long loop of pavement and static radio. But every once in a while, something stands out. This story begins with a wrong turn. It was late, just past midnight. I'd been driving 6 hours straight and my eyes felt like sandpaper. The GPS said to keep going another 30 miles before the next exit, but I saw one coming up, unmarked, just a black stretch of asphalt branching off. I don't know why I took it. Maybe I was too tired to argue with myself. Maybe curiosity pulled the wheel. The ramp curved down, deeper than it should have, and then spit me out onto a 2-lane road lined with trees that seemed too close, too tall. My GPS glitched. The map spun. No signal. Then, headlights appeared up ahead. A town. It looked normal at first. Small main street, neon signs, storefronts with striped awnings. I pulled in, parked near a diner, and stretched my legs. The air was cool but thick, like breathing through fabric. The diner's sign buzzed faintly. Open all night. Inside, people sat in booths, drinking coffee, eating pie. But no one looked up when I entered. The waitress came over without a smile, without even looking at me, and said, "You're late." I asked, "Late for what?" She poured me coffee I hadn't ordered. "You'll see." After eating, or trying to, I wandered the streets. Everything was almost right. Shops had names like Barker's Hardware and Main Street Pharmacy, but the windows were dusty, shelves half empty. Street lamps leaned slightly the wrong way, like they'd been bent by hands, not weather. I checked my phone, no signal. The clock flickered between 12:03 and 12:04, never moving past it. People walked the sidewalks, but their footsteps made no sound. And when I passed them, they didn't meet my eyes. Just kept walking, lips moving silently, as if reciting something only they could hear. In the center of town stood a fountain. The water wasn't moving. It looked frozen mid-splash, though when I touched it, it was wet. A man sat on the fountain's edge, suit too sharp, eyes too dark. He looked straight at me, unlike everyone else. "You don't belong here," he said. I nodded quickly. "I'm just passing through." He tilted his head. "Nobody just passes through." "You were called." I started to back away, but his voice pinned me in place. "You'll stay until it's your turn." I don't remember deciding to, but I checked into the hotel on the corner. The clerk didn't ask for ID, didn't ask for payment, just handed me a brass key with the number 6 etched deep into it. The hallway smelled like mildew and lemon polish. The carpet was thin, the kind where every step echoes louder than it should. In my room, the wallpaper was peeling. The bed looked slept in already. On the nightstand, a guest ledger sat open. Names filled the page, hundreds of them written in neat black ink. Some had dates next to them, years, decades, even centuries old. At the very bottom, the pen still wet, was my name. That night, I dreamed of the town. I stood in the diner, the booths full of silent people. Only this time, when I looked closer, their faces weren't finished. Blurry, as if sketched in pencil and never completed. When I woke up, my mouth was dry and my hands shook. On the nightstand, The ledger was open again. My name now had a date next to it. Tomorrow's date. Panic set in. I ran downstairs, out the door, into the street. My car was still there, keys still in my pocket. I drove fast, too fast, back the way I'd come. But every turn led me back to Main Street. The diner, the fountain, the hotel. I tried side roads, alleys, dirt paths. No matter what, I circled back. The man by the fountain watched each time I passed, always waiting, always smiling a little wider. That night, I didn't try to sleep. I sat on the bed, clutching the map from the GPS that no longer worked, staring at the ledger. At midnight, I heard footsteps in the hall. Slow, steady, stopping outside my door. The knob turned. I didn't open it. But the next morning, when I dared look, the ledger's page had turned. My name was gone. I don't know how I left. One moment I was in that room. The next, I was waking up in my car, parked on the side of a highway I recognized. My phone buzzed with missed calls, texts. It was 6 a.m. I drove home and never spoke of it. But sometimes, late at night, my GPS glitches. The map spins, and for a second, a name appears on the screen. The town's name, and always underneath it, my name, with a date I haven't reached yet. That was our 6th story. Long, winding, the kind of tale that makes you wonder about wrong exits, wrong turns, and the places that wait for you when you stray too far. And that's where we'll leave it for tonight. We've wandered through stories of people who never sleep, libraries that catalogue lives, buses that only run at 3:33, houses that wait until you're alone, hotel rooms that shouldn't exist, and towns that don't appear on any map. Each one whispered in that quiet, uncanny way that sticks with you long after the words are gone. I hope these stories gave you chills, but also a little calm. The kind of background unease that's just eerie enough to entertain, but soft enough that you can drift off or let it play while you build your world in Minecraft. If you enjoyed tonight's video, don't forget to like, leave a comment about which story stayed with you the most, and subscribe to SpiderFish for more long-form storytelling every week. Until next time, take care of yourself, take care of the people around you, and remember, some places are better left unexplored, but every story is worth listening to. Good night, everyone.